Welcome to Toffee TV. It's the Tuesday topic. I'm here with John Blaine from the Everton Business Matters podcast. We're going to talk about Farhad Moshiri and not only the difference he's made to the club, but a lot of things that go on that maybe people don't quite understand, or things that he's brought to the club, because you're still hearing little pockets of people not necessarily believing that he's done anything.
What are they not believing?
I don't know, but there's definitely people still out there going, it's still sell to buy and all these things. I mean, you've met the man. I mean, what are your actual?
He's a football fan.
Yeah,
that's the first thing.
Which is good.
He really is a football fan. When I met him last year, we spent 90 minutes. Because we were waiting for Steve Walsh, who was delayed on a train. Well, I wasn't, but they were. And you talk football with him. He knows his stuff. He's got opinions about players, who's good, who's bad, who's indifferent. So he's an enthusiast in that sense. But anyone who doesn't believe that he's made a difference hasn't been paying attention, have they? So he's sorted out the balance sheet, which is an accounting thing, which basically means he's poured some cash in. We won't see that in the accounts till properly till next January when the accounts come out. But the year's finished. It finished at the end of June. And there's 80 million reasons there to dissuade anyone from thinking that he hasn't made a difference. So that's tidying the balance sheet up, which makes the accounts look more solid, less risky. Clearly, he hasn't wiped the debt out, because in effect, what he's done is he's replaced debt with third parties with debt from him. Yeah. But of course, that means he can speak to people, banks, for example, Chinese banks, for example, and say, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and we can make the world a better place. Yeah. So I don't quite get the people who don't believe, unless they're predominantly dressed in red and they're just worried, as they should be. Yeah. You
mentioned the Chinese bank deal. I mean, what exactly does that bring to Everton? Because if you were maybe on the outside, people say, well, why are you? If you've got money, if Farhad Moshiri's got money, why is he getting into bed with a bank? Why has he got this overdraft when he's got his own money?
Many reasons. You don't get become a billionaire, do you, by throwing your cash around in an unstructured way? One of the things he said in the AGM last year, or early this year, the last AGM, was he wants this business to be sustainable. So he wanted to stand up on its own 2 feet. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about financial fair play and cost control and things like that. And those rules were set up to stop clubs being in hock effectively to a single individual. So he's trying to build a sustainable future, not just founded on the back of he's got deep pockets. And therefore, you sort out the balance sheet, you try and increase your revenues, you control your costs, and if some unforeseen events, you've got some money set aside for a rainy day, and that's a credit line or a line of credit which you can call upon when you need it. And fundamentally, that's what he's done with the Chinese bank. If you then start saying, well, what could those unforeseen needs be? Not all of them are unforeseen, because we're going to have to put some money into the special purpose vehicle with the city council. That's going to have to go in there at some stage to make sure that the stadium gets built. So he's just doing prudent things. It's prudent.
Is it a bit like what we're seeing Chelsea do, in a way, where you feel now that if Abramovich stepped aside from Chelsea, it would be able to run a
Chelsea is a really good role model, because if you remember when Abramovich got there, and clearly that was prior to FFP, he just poured his own money into the business, and then eventually turns it into equity and all, and it just disappears. The debt, if you will. But they've spent quite a long time now, haven't they, getting their act together. They don't have any issues with financial fair play. They can still spend huge amounts of money on players and salaries, which is more important. But let's not create a mess we have to fix. Let's start as we mean to go on.
The Chinese deal on it. Why weren't we shouting our heads off about it? Because it was the first deal of its type with the Chinese government as such. So why didn't we shout our heads off about that?
I really don't know. I mean, again, it's one of Paul's real bugbears, because it's not about the 60 million line of credit. It's about who they are. It's the world's largest bank of its type. It's clearly predominantly state owned, and it's such an expression of confidence in the plan that this man must have shared with them, that literally should have been exploited to the full hilt. They issued a press release, so they were proud to have Everton as a client, and yet we just let it pass by, and that exploitation of opportunities to increase perception of the football club is something we shouldn't miss. We should have explained it to people and said it was more than just a credit line of 60 million. It's really a statement of intent going forward.
It feels, because it felt almost similar to when we announced the deal with Finch Farm. Again, it was understated. It was understated, wasn't it? There was never really any sort of big hurrah made of it, was there? It was just that we've got this deal done. It was sort of mentioned in the general meeting when Robert Elston said there was new money coming in from sponsors, but it was still very understated. I know now, if you were to go to Finch Farm, there's a lot of branding, and obviously it has to be called USM Finch Farm. But again, the deal wasn't explained in a way that, I'm not saying it would ever put us on a deal like that would ever put us on the back pages, but you never felt like they were shouting from the rooftops. They were almost, sometimes I feel they're slightly embarrassed by doing these deals where other clubs just go mental.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things here, isn't there? One is we don't really know the value of that deal because it's been bundled up with the shirts, and maybe there's some caution there of breaking it out so that you'll see which deal's a good one and which one isn't, perhaps. But yeah, we should. Again, it's a world-class brand, USM, particularly in Russia and what have you. But yeah, why not? And I think we really should be measuring ourselves against our peers. Saying this is the biggest deal we've ever had when all the other deals were tiny doesn't really wash anymore, does it? So we have to compare ourselves with the group we want to be in, which is 6-4, hopefully 3-2-1 type of thing. But we just need to be really smarter at, frankly, advertising the brand, really. I mean, we talked about it before, but let's not understate ourselves. Let's not underestimate the appetite for news, particularly with 24-hour news channels, sports news channels, or whatever. When we're on Sky Sports News for the day, that was terrific, wasn't it? But even then, we didn't fully exploit it, perhaps as well as we could. So I think that we're a transition. We need to believe. And be bold.
This takes me on to something I heard you talking about last week on the podcast, was the tour to Tanzania. We were over there obviously for SportsPesa. It was obviously part of the contract.
Yeah, you would think so, yeah.
So why didn't we do anything with SportsPesa while we were there?
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows?
But if, from your point of view, if you were SportsPesa and they have done brilliantly well out of this sponsorship deal already, but if you got from their point of view, wouldn't you have wanted Everton had to have done something just involving the brand, even if it was even if obviously it wasn't something to do with betting, it was something to do maybe their charity work, because I know they do a lot of community work, and they've already done some with Everton with getting the coaches for Swansea last season.
Sure.
Wouldn't you have thought there would have been something organised where SportsPesa's brand would have been all over it? I know that was the game, but just something community based, maybe.
You would expect. I mean, and again, all you can do is, when you're talking about sponsorship, is SportsPesa want to get the maximum they can get out of it. The football club wants to get the maximum it can, which is why if they're complementary, it would help. At the moment, it certainly looks like SportsPesa are getting the better half of the deal. But life's all about, location, but timing. So the timing for them of weighing and all that sort of stuff is fantastic. But I am curious, and hopefully time will tell, why they weren't front of stage when we were in Tanzania. So something's perhaps going on there, I don't know.
We talk about communications. I mean, how do you feel about the relationship between this man and Jim White, as in terms of business? Because we've spoke about it, and at first I was very reluctant, and I didn't want us to be sort of, you see West Ham at times on Sky Sports and almost making news just to, don't look at this, look at this, and I didn't want it to be like that. But every time Jim White's spoken, something's happened, and I think that's been the difference in the relationship. Why do you think, from a business point of view, Farhad Moshiri prefers to go through someone like Jim White than actually use his own communications team?
I'm not convinced he prefers. Okay. I think, I said before, he's an enthusiast. Somehow he's developed, or Jim White, to his own benefit, has developed a relationship with him. And I can just imagine that perhaps Jim White's texting him every bloody day, but he only gets an occasional answer. yes, this is happening.
Yeah.
And of course Jim White then goes and splatters it. Yeah. When it first started happening, I was really curious. Then I thought, this is good. Now I'm still thinking it's not bad, but what the issue is when that communication or that marketing, because that's what it is, marketing, appears to be instead of, you know, official stuff coming out of the club. And it would really concern me if over time we find out that, you know, our media people or even our board members perhaps are learning things at the same time as the rest of us do. So as long as it's as well as, it would just become a bit, you know, quirky, but at the moment he's getting news before everybody else, you know, and I don't get that. I really don't.
I mean, I understand it from a point of view that he's the face of Sky Sports and he's the face of Talk Sport.
Sure.
Two of the biggest, you know, from what they do, 24-hour news and 24-hour radio news.
Sure.
So I understand that point of view. It's almost talking past Evertonians and sort of telling the world of football what's happening. So I understand.
That's the positive side.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a time when it is pulled in a little bit and he can rely on Everton's communication team to do that, knowing that people will start looking at Everton thinking, well, when's the next thing going to happen? When's the next thing going to happen?
It's a people business, isn't it, at the end of the day? And personalities actually can greatly increase the coverage you get in the media. And if Jim White says, I've got some news coming up for Evertonians, I've been speaking to my sources, then we all hear, oh, Bashiri's told him something. So that's great for those channels that he works for. We need to make sure it stays great for us as well. So that's what I mean. It can't be instead of the official channels. Your question is, why doesn't he go to the official channels? Because he's just introducing a layer. I mean, does Farhad Bashiri have to tell Brian Duggan something so Brian can tell Jim, or does Bashiri just tell Jim or Bill or whatever? I just think it needs to be coordinated, it needs to be joined up, and it needs to be, and I know it's a bit boring, but it needs to be part of a plan. And if this is just ad hoc, if it is just reacting to Jim White rather than pushing stuff out, then it won't last. Because we'll need to be more controlled than that. I
suppose in a way it's part of what we are in at the moment, though, isn't it? 24-hour news, social media. There is a gap in the market that always has to be filled, and the club can't always fill that space, because that space is rumour, innuendo, getting news out before it actually happens. The club has to stay professional in a way.
You've been listening to the Everton Business Matters.
Well, but also this.
Well, you have, haven't you?
But I have. But
so what am I going to answer this with?
Well, it's not
Chief Engagement Officer.
But this is also 7 years of my own experience. My own experiences. And starting to know how things work. You have to. But I know what you're going to say, Chief Engagement Officer. But
it's a go-to person at the end of the day.
But do the club have to give themselves plausible deniability in all these stories? Is there a time when Jim White is going to be the fall guy and Everton have to say, well, no, we don't know anything about that? Or is he that's why he's there now?
I don't know. To me, you control the narrative as best you can.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and it's not just with TV or radio. It's also with the printed media who all have digital presences and so on. You know, we talk on Everton Business Matters about what appears to be the rough deal that the local media get, but you've got to develop relationships. You've got to nurture relationships, because when you say plausible deniability, I think what you're saying is we're about to buy Virgil van Dijk, but we don't want anyone to know just yet. Because we want to close it out. If you've got a good relationship with the media, and I don't mean saying don't publish this till this certain date, but being able to have a conversation, tell them what's going on and say this is off the record, you can't repeat it, blah blah blah, then you build trust, and once you build trust, you're in a better place.
But it works the other way at times, doesn't it? Because we do know there are trusted journalists out there, the likes of Paul Joyce, very good, but sometimes they jump the gun as well. Let's take the Sandro deal for instance. They tried to fill the space by saying it's going to happen, but it was happening for 2 weeks, and then that creates that uncertainty. So it's but with the club not saying anything.
But when you say there's favoured journalists, are there journalists who are favoured by the club, or journalists like with him who are favoured by individuals within the club?
I see. Yeah.
That therefore is not part of a plan.
Yeah.
Is it? If Joyce has just got Bill's phone number, so he speaks to Bill, and Jim White speaks to Farhad, do Bill and Farhad speak to each other to make sure the message is consistent? And if Duggan or somebody else gets dumped on with a question and they don't know the answer, that's a real problem, yeah, because then they feel uncomfortable then.
So go on, tell me about the chief communications officer.
Engagement
officer. Go on.
He's a go-to person,
just
for everybody.
For everybody.
Yeah, he lives and breathes the brand all day long. Yeah, he sits at board level because he has to.
This is definitely a bit of me there. By the way,
he sits at board level, which he has to.
Yeah,
yeah. And when things happen, not in the right way, like
controls it.
He explains why it wasn't the right way. And that's sort of, so what happens in a hierarchical organisation is you can have two styles, can't you? And you can recognise the one that Everton Football Club might have been for quite a long time, where you have the boss and he has someone who reports to him and he has someone who reports to him and so on. And the number of times I would hear when I was engaged with the club, we'll have to ask the board, we'll have to ask somebody. And so people are not actually empowered to do stuff because they don't know what the plan is, you know? So it actually puts pressure on people if you empower them, because they have to do it right, yeah? So to my mind, if you have, and it's two roles we think, I think, should be on the board who are not apparently there at the moment.
Yeah.
One is this, what we're calling the Chief Engagement Officer, which is the fella who basically is the big cheese on engagement and communicating with everybody outside the club.
Yeah.
Not just fans, but media, other club, whatever. He's the go-to person. So when a journalist thinks, oh, what's happening with this Sandro bloke? He doesn't have to have a think, who do I speak to? He goes and he gets told no comment, or this is what's happening but don't tell anyone, or whatever. The other one's the commercial guy, the man who's accountable. You know, when you ask questions, is this sports pacer deal a good one? He's the one who answers it, yeah? Because he's accountable. And as soon as you put accountability into individuals, and you know, you did it in the other little video we did about, you know, once you put that accountability in, then we can measure it.
Yeah.
And if they're not good enough, we replace them. Yeah. This is what we do on the pitch.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if the right back's not good enough,
you
know, and he's City, you pay 50 odd million for one, yeah. But you replace them in a controlled way. You see that they're not going to be good enough, or you know they're not good enough, and you seek to get someone better. And we should be applying the same logic to our off-field team as we do to the on-field team. And it just seems to me that, you know, if we have a communications or an engagement breakdown, whose fault is it? And that sounds a bit blame culture, but he also gets the credit for when it goes right as well. And if I know it's me, I am accountable. Me as a person, and you probably say the same, I'll make sure it's right. And I'll trust people. And there just seems to be a trust gap at the moment. But we are in a period of change, and that's uncomfortable for lots of people when change is happening. But, as he says, it's a small window of opportunity. Yeah, we've got to get it right.
Well, I completely agree with you as well, because we know that in the past when things have gone wrong, the club just clams up. Everyone toes the party line, and no one comes out. And you're right about controlling the narrative. And it's not just things. It's not just like big things. It's little things like, if you get beat and it's a heavy defeat, you own the conversation if you're first out there. I mean, I've spoke before, and things like, you know, I'd love to see Everton have their own channel, and I think
TV,
I'd love to have their own TV,
on Sky or something.
Yeah, or just nowadays you could just have it, and you could just put it out on an app or something, and you know, it can get on TV in so many different ways. And let's say the club after the game had a call-in show, you know, phone-in show where people moan. I mean, Liverpool have it, you know, Man United have had it in the past. And I think in the past the club, and I don't know if it's the same now, the club will go, we can't do that. God, we can't have fans moaning at an official club, you know, thing. But why not? Why not own the narrative? Why not own the rage? Why not?
Do you remember when Kevin Keegan sold Andy Cole?
Yeah.
And he stood on those steps and he said to the fans, effectively, trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Chief Engagement Officer could face up that, couldn't he? Go in a room with a headset, listen to the calls, answer them. Yeah. You know,
I mean, obviously they'd be for big things, but
for business things and what have you. The managers do it because they have to through the Sky TV deal and stuff like that. But as you're right, those managers who do it properly, they steal the narrative. Mourinho is a master, you know. But yes, so trust the fans.
Yeah. Because I think that's what's missing. I think, and this will lead me on to one thing in a moment, is that the club don't always get the fans, and maybe it's because of there has been change in the past, and that head of communications changed quite a lot in the 2 or 3 years, and let's say we had a couple of people who didn't quite get the fans and would openly have murder with them on Twitter, well, namely me as well. They would. It happens, but if you have someone, if you control the narrative, and you did have those, let's say, for the basic thing, a game of football, something bad happens, and I remember when we got beat by Wigan in the cup, and nobody from the club, even the players, went on Twitter for 4 days. Like, nobody did. Like, they were told, well, you should go out straight away and just own the frustration and the hatred. And if you have got a call-in show, own it, and then you can add all your little adverts to it, and you've made some money off it. And I don't think we're very good at that. But the one person who was quite good at that was Alan Myers. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think he'd be the perfect person to do that? Let's say if he had his time again. Was he doing it before, or was he maybe getting a little bit too close to the fans?
No, I don't think he was getting too close. I think he was out there on his own for a lot of the time, and that's communications, you know. And there's a huge difference between communications and engagement, because it's two-way and all that good stuff. So what Alan was doing, I think, is a subset of what we would expect a chief engagement officer to do, because the chief engagement officer could do that with the fans. And then go into a corporate meeting with a sponsor and do it to them, and help his commercial colleague on the board extract that little bit extra income and those sorts of things. So it's a really heavyweight role and a really skilled individual, because the soft skills, you know, staying calm, they'd be everything. One minute they're a fan, the next minute they're a politician, the next minute they're a salesman, the next minute they're a lawyer, and so on. And bring all that together in a single accountable individual whose job at the end of the day is like the press officer does for the president. He takes all the crap, you know, and he dampens it down, but do the other things as well. And I just think Alan remains fantastic. If you're talking about engaging, that element of engaging with the fans, he was terrific. And you know, who knows, someone out there why he's not here anymore with the club, but you know, he'd crawl on his hands and knees tomorrow if he could come back.
Do you think that if someone, not just saying Alan, but you'd need that little bit extra layer of trust from the club to be able to say those things and be able to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that's the only thing that was missing?
Absolutely. I mean, when I've employed people in the past, then you know, if I'm picking, say you're picking the chief executive for the next, you're Farhad Moshiri, and you're picking the next chief executive. Your power, your authority is you pick the guy. You tell him what you expect from him, and then you've got to let him do his job. Not interfere.
Like the manager.
Like the manager. Or in our case, he's a coach. He's no longer a manager, but absolutely right, you know. I mean, it's not as black and white at the moment, but simplistically, you know, Walsh picks the players, and Koeman gets the best out of them. But you do consult and inform each other, so don't give me a right back if I want to centre forward. But that, I think, was what went wrong a little bit at the beginning with those two guys. Roles and responsibilities didn't have clarity, and you have to do that throughout the organisation. You have to have clarity around roles and responsibilities. I know what I'm accountable for. I know if it goes right, I'm the one who gets the credit. I know if it goes wrong, I'm the one who takes the kicks. And if I have a team, my job, just like the manager or the captain, because you've got hierarchies there as well, you know, I get my team all pulling in the same direction. And it does, that trust word keeps recurring. You have to trust. And if I get it wrong, you give me a slap. If I get it wrong again, you sack me. You know, that's the world I've lived in for 20 or 30 years. And I've been sacked as a consequence. But absolutely, trust is key. And if you can't trust people who support the football club, you can't trust anybody. So trust the fans.
I think probably the best instance of that was when we beat Chelsea in the FA Cup.
His first game.
And Bill was given...
That's his first game.
Well, the first game, Goodison,
And he was at live.
And Bill was giving him Martinez all the love, and he just gave him a glance as, you're not going to be here very long, mate. Just that ruthlessness, and I just... I think we need... I think if Alan came back, or someone like Alan, you'd like to see him given that job, but obviously give him the spectrum, the whole thing, so we can... And I think that's probably what was missing last time. But
you know, and the club needs to be more outward facing.
Definitely,
you know, and it was a bit glib before about the stadium, build it and they will come. But we shouldn't be having debates about what the capacity is.
No,
it's the biggest capacity we can get in the footprint and afford. And not less than what our peers have. because building a new stadium that has less capacity than everyone above us
Yeah.
is pretty damn pointless. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's trust in him.
Well,
that'll be great
and,
when we see it.
And there's rumours that, like, you're right, rumours that Spurs are going to have one more seat than Arsenal.
Yeah.
It's like when you name, if you're going to name your shop Everton 2, and you commit to it, don't you? And it doesn't matter if people go, oh, that's stupid. You just do it. You just commit to it. And at the end of the day, if it gives fans a reason to say, well, we've got a bigger stadium than yours, then...
Well, absolutely. And although on one level that's childish,
it is, I don't care.
But it's fantastic as well, isn't it? And a bit like people saying they want the capacity to be 61,878. Those little things, they create stories in their own right.
John, you want to talk childish? We're talking about a set of fans at the moment that are lording it over us because they won the Premier League Asia Trophy.
Oh,
right?
really?
Oh yeah, right. And because they've won more, certain players have won more trophy and won some of them. And then, but if we'd won it, then you've won a Tin Pot Cup or whatever. So that's what you're talking about. Let's talk about the stadium very quickly, because again, you might get people. Well, you're going to have people, maybe not at Blues, maybe other people saying the council are building your stadium, right? I know you have discussed this on the podcast, but let's get into it. How are Everton financing the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock?
We're borrowing money.
Okay.
Don't know where we're going to borrow from. Yeah, maybe China.
Maybe
who knows?
China, yeah.
But we are borrowing money.
Yeah.
And in borrowing money, you have to have a good credit rating and those sorts of things. And if you keep it simple, the council have a better credit rating than we do. Therefore, technically, they're going to guarantee the money that we borrow, that it will get paid back.
Okay.
In return for that guarantee, the council is going to get a fee, which is great. Therefore, the stadium gets built. It's very effective. It's cost effective. We borrow money at a lower rate. Blah blah. To make those mechanics happen, it's going to go into a company, private company, which is in the documents that the council talk about. That's the SPV.
SPV.
So we'll get a name.
Yeah.
It'll be called Bramley-Moore Stadium Limited or something, and the council will control that SPV because they have to make sure that we pay, basically the mortgage, if you will, and then at the end of 40 years, it's ours. So they're not building it for us. They're not even borrowing the money for us. We are, but they are guaranteeing it. And as we said on the podcast, the SPV fundamentally will own the stadium, and the council own the SPV. So the council own the stadium. But it's how the devil is in the detail of how those agreements are put together that gives the surety that we'll get the stadium built in the most cost-effective way, and it's ours. It's not the council's stadium; it's our stadium. And as I think I said on the last podcast, we are, smarter than the average bear. So if there's people of another persuasion who are getting all hung up about it, just smile at them and say, we're doing it the most effective way.
John, they're all worried about their small ships. That's what it is, and it's a battle warehouses. But it's very, like you said on the podcast, it's very much like a mortgage, isn't it? You get your mortgage, you own the house, but in effect you don't own the house.
Someone's got a charge on it.
So so that's the top and bottom of it, and hopefully that should.
Can't wait to see the pictures, man.
Something tells me you've already seen them.
No, I haven't. I wish I had. It's going to be a cracking reveal when it's done, though, isn't it?
I know.
If the club are listening, that's the day or the series of days to really exploit the interest worldwide.
Do it on Wayne Rooney's Twitter. I think that's just. Do you need picking up for work tomorrow? Is this your new or something like that? That'd be the way to. Couple of points. FFP. Where do we stand at the moment with FFP?
In what way?
Because last summer it seemed like we had an issue with it.
Right.
Are we completely? Fine? Does it look like we're completely fine with FFP at the moment?
We should be. We this is where me and Paul do agree. We did some numbers a couple of podcasts ago just to see effectively how much money could we spend and still stay within the confines, and we haven't spent it yet.
Yeah, there you go.
So we said way in one of the first podcasts, financial fair play and spending money. That actually spending the money is not the issue. Finding people to spend it on is. In other words, you've got to get the players that the manager and the director of football want, and attracting those people to the club was a bigger issue than the money itself. But it becomes a virtuous circle. Revenues are going up because of TV money. Revenues are going up because of increased sponsorship. They need to keep going up. And anyone who thinks we're a buy-to-sell club hasn't paid attention.
Well, that's
because every club above us is a buy-to-sell club.
Well,
in that context,
that's going to lead us on to our final point. But I think a really important point. It's this word that gets, this phrase that gets bandied around, which is net spend. The idea that, again, if we listen to our neighbours, will say, "We just haven't spent anything this summer. All you've done is spend the Lukaku money." Net spend is king. We've been in it for years. Brendan Rodgers loved it. It was his favourite. It was his favourite phrase to prove that he hadn't spent any money at Liverpool. But net spend doesn't mean anything, does it? It's not
really. No.
You know, in business terms, it's a word that's thrown out by newspapers and football people, but it doesn't really mean anything from. So
not really.
So
no.
Tell us what really does matter.
How much you spend in total.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, we do papers on these things and keep it simple, I suppose. If we buy a player, right, for £25 million, which we've done recently, so we buy a player for £25 million, and we put him on contract for 5 years, then in the accounts of the football club for FFP and for short-term cost control, the Premier League rules, he will cost us the 25 million divided by the number of years per year. So that comes as a cost. And you can do those sums, can't you? 25 divided by 5.
Yeah, don't.
5 million, right? So he costs us 100 grand a week.
Yeah.
If we pay him 100 grand a week, he costs us 200 grand a week. That's the cost to the profit and loss. And it's that loss bit that FFP is all about, you know, and short-term cost control. They're all about, have you got a sustainable business? Yeah. If you buy a player for 25 million and you sell a player for 25 million, then your net spend 0.
Yeah.
But if the guy you sold was on 50 grand a week and the guy you bought on 100 grand a week, your costs have gone up by 50.
Yeah.
So the guys who think net spend's the metric are not noticing this, are they? And if you look at what we've done with the guys we've bought in this window, or indeed since Mashiri turned up, our costs have gone up, you know, up by whatever it is, £750,000 a week. Yeah. And that accounts for the Lukaku money. Yeah. So if you're smart, as we appear to be, then you get top dollar for the guys you sell, you know, you make them pay up front, and then you buy players, and then you can amortise the cost, and you'll have heard that word, amortise the cost over the terms of their contracts. So net spend it's good for the media, and it's interesting to say Liverpool have spent 300 and brought in 100, so their net spend's 200. But what's happened to the wage bill? You know, and as financial fair play is all about one part of it, but short-term cost control within the Premier League is actually about stopping you spending all that increase in TV money in players' wages. So it's really important metrics. So it just doesn't make sense that you just do that simple calculation and assume if we've spent more than we've brought in, that's good. Yeah, it's not really. Yeah,
it's just a lazy way to put it out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's simplistic. And the devil is always in the detail. Yeah, and if people get the accounts, which will come out, you know, in 3 or 4 or 5 months, then what they'll see is the amortization charges will have gone up significantly, and the wage bill will have gone up significantly as well. But because of the increase in TV revenues, for most of, not all of the Premier League, the ratio of salaries to turnover, which is the key metric, will go down.
And I suppose this is where now, you know, coming full circle, where we've got to start making the most of all those other things, you know, advertising, commercial deals. I mean, obviously, because for a long time we were living just on TV money, really.
Yes.
And it still keeps going up, and that's great. And we've seen, well, I mean, it seems almost like a false economy though, because of the prices of the players, which are just getting ridiculous. But in terms of what the Premier League TV money are, that I believe around the late 90s, it was actually, you know, in terms of what you were getting from the TV deal and what you were buying on a player, it was more expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
So you know, in those terms, but if we can get those commercial deals start going up,
it's vital. It's vital because of short-term cost control. If that stays in place, you're limited on how you can spend the money that you get from the TV broadcasting. And if you put it in context for Everton, the last accounts we had, our turnover actually went down a little bit, but call it about 125 million. We'll get more from TV than that. Yeah. So TV's, we're going to get more just from TV than we got for everything in the last accounts. So that means it's almost impossible for Premier League teams to break financial fair play. Yeah. They can fall foul of short-term cost control, so you have to be cautious around that, but it's almost impossible because, as we said before, the players aren't out there to allow you to spend the money. But we need to get those other pillars of income, you know, and at the end of the day, it's TV money, we're restricted. Stadium, match day, we're restricted, so we're sorting out the stadium on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. Then you've got that, quote, other commercial income, but also the academy as well. And that's the one we call the fourth one. Get used to us buying players. We're a finishing school. Okay, there are players we are buying as kids and ones and twos, maybe fives and sixes, millions, who we hope are going to end up in our team. And if they don't, we're going to sell them on at a profit.
Again, almost like the Chelsea.
And that's what Chelsea have been doing.
So there was one area of the club that you would really like to see, you know, be developed and to make money. I mean, what would you think is the number one at the moment that's lagging behind?
I would never say only one.
Well, if you had one,
but it's that other commercial income one. It has to be, you know, and in that basket is all the commercial partners we have, of which we have 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is. And again, we covered in Everton Business Matters how many Man United have got, Liverpool, Chelsea, blah blah. We've got to improve that, not just to put brand names on the bottom of our website, generating real income, you know. And I would always suggest that if we do a really good commercial deal, we'll brag about it. If we just pop up and say, oh, we've done a thing with Shaw deodorants, it's probably not worth very much. So we need a greater volume of commercial partners, but also spending significant amounts of money with us. And then the things like shirts, Umbro, Fanatics, all need to be far better next time around than they were last time. But
as we were saying, we've got to get better at actually getting them out there, and because it's all full circle.
It is circular, absolutely circular. I mean, and again, we keep saying we talk about it on the podcast, but we have, you know, if you're going to Nike or to Puma or to Adidas or indeed carry on talking to Umbro right now, which is what we should be doing, you're saying this is what you're going to be able to sell. This is where we're going to be visible. This is where we're going to play. This is where we're going to aspire. And that sports pacer thing, you know, if 5 years down the line, you know, we're in a brand spanking new stadium on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey and we're playing in the Champions League, they've hit the jackpot. Big style. So you hope that commercial deal has kickers in it for performance and so on. And you know, sometimes we're going to have to show it in the accounts to if you're doing well, tell people you're doing well. Just don't hide it in a bucket called other commercial income. Unless that becomes a huge number, and then we'll be really happy. There
you have it. You can catch John. He is on the Everton Business Matters podcast through the Blue Room. Make sure you check that out. If you haven't seen the video already, we're talking about Wayne Rooney, make sure you check that out as well. Big thanks to John for coming on the show.
Can I just add one thing?
Go on.
That's it. Paul said I wouldn't say it.
Okay.
Because he always says he just want to add
one thing. You haven't summarised either.
No, that's Roger's gig.
You haven't summarised. There you have it. Catch John on Twitter as well. It is at John B.
John at... Oh, no, I don't know what it is.
Your Twitter?
_B58.
There
John
you go.
_B58. Something like that. You'll find me. You'll find me if you want to.
There you go. Find John on Twitter because he's always got good things to say. And there you have it. Thanks for watching Toffee TV. We'll see you later.
Cheers, guys.